Welcome to another episode of the Seven Stones podcast, Partners in Growth. Today we have a guest as part of our ongoing series, Humans of Bali, a series where we dive into deep conversations with diverse individuals and topics that form Bali's authenticity. With me in the studio today is Nicolaas Kimman, who I met via email through mutual connections, but officially at the Scholars of Sustenance kitchen in Sanur. Born in Sanggau, West Kalimantan, Nic pretty much grew up in Indonesia as he went on to live in Balikpapan, Palembang, Jakarta, and Bali. Upon finishing high school, he went on to study abroad in Singapore, Dubai, and Sydney. Graduating with a BBA, he decided to go work in the kitchens instead. How that transition came about and why did he eventually choose to move back home to Bali is just a few of the things we'll be getting to know about Nicolaas today. Especially looking forward to learning how his choices have taken him all over the world, it seems. So before I talk too much, let me welcome Nic. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. What have you been up to most days recently?
I mean, cooking at the kitchen pretty much.
Yeah. How much time do you usually spend in the kitchens per week?
The kitchen about 10 to 12 hours, I guess. And then average work day is about 16, 17 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Lots of hours. We're gonna get back into what you do in the kitchen in a little bit. But first, for the audience out there, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself?
Well, you already mentioned I was born here. So born in a small village in West Kalimantan called Sanggau. I was born there because my parents moved here 35 years ago. Dad came here for environment, my mom came here for art, they fell in love with each other, they fell in love with the country, and the rest is kind of history, I guess. We moved around a lot, mainly because of my dad's work, so I got exposed to lots of different parts of Indonesia, and I really fell in love with the country even more. It's really a home for me, even though I look like I'm fresh off the plane. But yeah, that's kind of a brief background there. After I graduated high school, I wanted to explore the world a bit more, had the opportunity to study in 3 different countries with a scholarship program, but business was not really the thing I wanted to pursue, so after I graduated I hopped into kitchens, because that's where my passion lay, and then worked in kitchens for about 3 years, then moved back to Bali, and then, now at SOS.
Nice. So, you grew up in Indonesia, but you mentioned you're not originally from here. Where are you originally from?
I guess from Holland.
Yeah, but you feel from here, right? Because you grew up here.
It's always a question people ask.
Yeah.
It's like, where are you from? I'm from Holland, but I've never lived there.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it, and I don't feel a connection with it. So I look it though.
I'm always very interested to learn perspectives from people like you, though, because I have a couple friends who are also, ethnically not from here, but grew up here. So being born here and growing up here, and this is your home, can you shed some light on what that is like?
Oh, it's every day you're surprising people, that's for sure. Like every single day of my life, every time I used Indonesian, I'd get the shocked reaction of like, how is this guy speaking Indonesian? Like, what is going on? And then they ask you about your life and everything like that, but I really enjoyed that part. I've had people ask me like, don't you get kind of annoyed by people reacting that way every single day? It's like, no, not really, because it's nice to have conversation. That's something I really love about this country as well, is just people's willingness to just openly talk. And me speaking Indonesian is always an icebreaker, I guess. People let their guard down. I can see them looking at me like, oh, so bule, and then suddenly like, oh, never mind, he's just a local guy.
Yeah, that willingness to talk. Actually, I've had conversations about how nowhere else in the world will a random driver ask you where you live.
Exactly. Or like talk about your love life with a security guard, just and have in-depth conversation about all your relationships, and then almost cry as this is a personal experience. But like that's truly what I love about this place. And just being able to speak the language is always, of course, it helps.
But you said that's part of the thing you love about it, but does it ever get a little annoying at times when people kind of, I know sometimes there's a little bit of a skin view as well.
I guess, but again, I've been asked this before, and I always say, if I get annoyed by it, I'm annoyed every single day of my life.
Yeah.
So I don't really get annoyed by it. It's more like, of course, I completely understand the reaction. Like, I mean, look at how pink and white I am right now. And then when I speak Bahasa, it's like, whoa, and then I tell them my background, and it's even more whoa. So, and it always leads to really lovely conversation, and that's what I love to do, just talk.
Yeah.
Suka ngobrol kan. So.
It's a very positive outlook for it. Really like that. So going back to your studies, you mentioned studying in those 3 countries. How did your choice of degree come about, and why the moving around in those 3 locations?
Choice of degree was spontaneity. So I was in high school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do after. University called SPJ came, and they were promoting their school. I always ask all the universities questions. You know, I just like to know stuff. And I guess that piqued the interest of the recruiter, and he came up to me, and then we talked, and he liked my background as well, which helped. Offered a scholarship, and the program was 4 years of study, so BBA, in 3 different countries. So you do 1 year in Singapore, your 2nd year in Dubai, and then finishing 2 years in Sydney.
So it was part of the program?
Yes, so it's 1 degree, 3 countries to give us kind of that exposure.
Wow.
And even though the subject, I was interested in business, you know, talking kind of came naturally, and I did drama in the past, so presenting wasn't really difficult, you know, stage fright is not really there, so it gelled well. But yeah, when I graduated, I was more like, no, I want to pursue what's in here, and I love to cook. And the business now really helped when working with SOS, like the marketing and everything that I've learned ties back in now, so I'm really glad I did that. But like after I graduated, I didn't see the value, because I was more like, no, I don't want to be in a suit, I don't want to do this stuff. But yeah, now it's amazing. Like everything I've done is kind of led to this moment.
Do you think you would have figured out that passion for cooking if you hadn't taken business first?
Well, passion of cooking has always been there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love food since I was like a kid. I had a really fat stage. And then the love of food kind of spurred the love of cooking, because I didn't want to wait for good food. So I was like, okay, I'm going to cook myself, you know what I mean? So started cooking a little bit when I was an 8-year-old kid, making like just monstrosity sandwiches, which is just stuffing whatever you could find in between 2 pieces of bread.
Yeah.
After that, making more dishes, and then I really started to appreciate cooking once I went to college, because that's when you were for saving money, right? You saw the utility of it.
It's really the experimentation phase of cooking.
Exactly, and then also the bringing people together part is what I love the most about cooking, and just why I wanted to pursue it afterwards. Because I would have like arguments with people, or people would be there'd be drama, and then you just put food on the table and everyone shuts up and eats.
Yeah.
It's just awesome, and I was like, there you go, you're all just hungry, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So that to me also spurred that like want to delve into this world even more, and the beauty of food and how it just connects everyone.
Yeah. That's really an interesting perspective as well, like the way that food brings everyone together, especially because different cultures also produce different types of foods, right?
But it's like the one thing people don't really argue about.
Yeah.
You know, like people don't argue about food that much. It's like, oh, let's eat. You know, it's like it ends arguments. It doesn't really, unless you're arguing about where to eat.
Yeah.
Food
which always starts a big thing. So you said you graduated with a bachelor in business administration, but then you decided to go work in the kitchens instead. And you haven't mentioned this, but I know you let me know that you worked on and managed food trucks. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I started the cooking career or path with cooking for schools. So I had to have experience to be able to work in more of like a cafe, restaurant setting. And I had enough home-taught experience to run like, I guess, a school canteen. So I was cooking for like 30 to 50 kids 3 to 5 times a day.
Wow.
So quite a lot. And you're alone in the kitchen doing the prep, the cooking, the dishes, and then repeat.
So there was no one else?
No, you're just alone.
Wow.
Yeah. So that taught me the time management, and actually those things I learned there I replicate in the kitchen today, because it's kind of like huge catering style. The food trucks was just an awesome experience because I got to travel around New South Wales and went to like 25 different events, music events. I saw artists, I forgot their names, but people would really like to go see this artist. I was like, I saw them.
But it's at the moment when you can't think about it off the top of your head.
No, I think Khalid or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I saw him live behind a grill while I was flipping burgers. But the whole experience of the food truck world was awesome because it's a great community. It's hard work, which is also where I get the work ethic in the kitchen from. Like, that was hard work. This is hard work, but it's easier now because I've done it. So
you kind of get the trial part before.
It's interesting now, like when I reflect on what I'm doing, it's like every single decision, even though it seemed random at the time, even though I questioned it at the time, all seem to have brought me to this point of running this kitchen, and I wouldn't have been able to run it as smoothly as I am without all these random decisions in the past. So it all makes sense now, which is great.
I think that's a great point to make as well, because some people kind of, there's multiple stages in their life when they get confused or why they move to these different choices, but it's because they haven't gotten to that ultimate point yet where you see that all these moments has led you to this.
Well, it's like your intuition is telling you to do something, and it's sometimes hard to follow what's in here because it's scary, right? Sometimes it's a huge risk. Like, shit, I graduated business and I decided to go cook at school. Sorry I'm swearing. I started cooking in schools instead. My dad was like, what are you doing? But then he understood, because it was really what I wanted to do. And at times, of course, you questioned it and you're like, what am I doing? But now it all makes sense, and I'm just so happy. That's awesome.
Would that be your definition of your success as well? Is that you're happier doing this as opposed to what would be the more conventional route?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy that I made the decisions I did. Because, again, at these crossroads of life, when you make a decision, you often think, I should have made the logical decision instead of just following kind of maybe the more irrational, heart, emotional decision. But I've always kind of made the hard decision, and it's kind of led me to here, and it's great. So all these past, I had moments in the past where I would freak out about what am I doing, but now that I'm here, it's kind of funny to think about those moments. I'm like, if I could have told my past self about this, he would have been like, never mind, it's great.
No need to worry.
Exactly. But like you said, it's only when you get to this point do you realize everything you've done kind of made sense.
Yeah. Super. So after all this food truck and working in the kitchens, you decided to move back to Bali. And you said you worked at a couple travel agencies. What was was that a personal decision, or was that what was available, or what was that?
That was
like?
really just because of availability.
Okay.
I mean, born here, really lived here my whole life, but I still have a Dutch passport, which means that I can't work here without a kitas. So a kitas is like, I don't have to explain. So when I arrived, I was like, okay, I need a job. What job can you get easily? Travel, tourism industry. And then, worked for 2 different companies, and then lost a job because of Corona. As soon as I lost a job, I already knew about SOS, so I immediately volunteered. And then I guess the rest is also history now.
So you started with a volunteering process, but then you got more of a full-time job there as well. Can you tell us, we've been mentioning SOS throughout this whole podcast, tell us a little bit more about what SOS is, what they do, and what you handle specifically.
Okay, so before COVID-19, SOS was really a food rescue organization. It still is. But their main process was rescuing food from restaurants and cafes and hotels that was surplus, so leftover food. Let's say you have a buffet breakfast at a hotel, guaranteed not all of the food is going to be eaten. There's going to be leftovers. Usually these leftovers are either given to staff or thrown away because you cannot serve it the next day based on just industry standards. This is the food we rescue, and then we repurpose by serving it to orphanages and to other communities that really needed it. So that was before COVID, that was really their main operation. After the pandemic happened, of course, tourism pretty much got wiped out in terms of the restaurants closing, cafes closing, so the amount of food we got in was less, which means the amount of food we could give out became less, so that posed a problem. And then we started with other projects and initiatives to try and compensate for that. So there's the community fridges where people can just donate their own food. And we pick it up every day and distribute it. Right now, the main one is the Food Rescue Kitchen, which we started on the 17th of June. And that is also what I kind of started when I was with SOS. So as a volunteer, kind of laid out the plans of the kitchen voluntarily ran it from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. for like 2 weeks, and then they were like, all right, get your report, and I was like, okay, great. And then kept that going. So I guess that's what I'm mainly in charge of course, is the kitchen and making sure that it's running smoothly. But now we're already almost 5 months operational, something like that. And of course, responsibilities have gone up. I'm trying to open more kitchens, and I could do a whole list, but the main thing is always the kitchen. And making sure that nutritious food goes to the people.
Right. Yeah, that's I think what I also love that you guys do is that you're not just providing food, but you're making sure it's nutritious food, because the people need that aspect of it too, right?
Not just to be full, but to be healthy.
Yeah. And just a quick side note, you mentioned the community fridges program. Could you give a little detail on where they're located, or where people could find out information if you don't know off the top of your head?
There's 11 of them, I know that.
Okay.
The one that's most active, I guess, where you get the most from, is at Alive Foods in Sanggau. Yeah. And then there's a few more places. In Smorgas in Sanor, there's one as well, so we get quite a lot there. That's the community fridges, and we've got a bunch of other programs. I could go through them, but it might take some time to explain each one in detail.
But people can find out.
If you go to our Instagram, there's posts regularly about all of our different initiatives and programs. You can always direct message us, either on SOS page, or if you find my Instagram somewhere, you can always message me. And any questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I know every day there's always something different, but what does a typical day for you at SOS look like, or otherwise? Like outside SOS, or there's no outside SOS?
SOS always manages to stay somewhere. A typical day is waking up at around 4:30, getting ready, heading to the kitchen, being there around 5, latest 5:30, then setting up everything. The main thing you have to do at the kitchen is rice. Rice takes time, you can't rush rice, and rice, we need a lot of cooking, around 200 kilos of dry rice every day, which turns into about 400 kilos of cooked rice. I'm alone at the kitchen till about 7, 8 a.m., and then volunteers start coming in. When volunteers start coming in, they're doing all the prep, so cutting vegetables, etc., peeling eggs, or whatever prep that needs to be done. Then all the cooking is finished around 9:30, 10, and then you package everything, and we typically have all the meals packaged and done before 1 p.m. After that, it's me waiting for all the distribution channels to come and pick up, and making sure everything is going according to plan, basically. And once the kitchen is closed, I go home and I do marketing stuff and a bunch of other SOS-related work.
So a full day, even though not all of it's spent in the kitchen, still a full day with SOS.
But it's always enjoyable. Like it's not like I'm reluctantly doing work. I love what I do.
Yeah.
And it's just
that's always a good aspect
to
keep in mind. So I know we talked about it a little bit before, but I want to talk a little bit about people who, like you, similarly follow the heart choice, and they choose to leave behind conventional office jobs or whatever else, and then choose to work in service for others. Because you could have just, worked in a kitchen at a restaurant or somewhere, right? Why did you choose to do that, and what motivates you to keep going in this direction?
My motivation is never money. That's what I typically tell people. I'm pretty good at business. Well, I've got the degree. And I like helping other people with managing their stuff, but I can never help myself because I just can't. Whenever I try, it's like, I can't do it. And even with the cooking, opening a restaurant, I've thought about it so many times, but I can never get it off the ground because I don't see the purpose. I'm always like, why? I'm just making food, and sure, people like my food, but what's the extra thing? And what I really loved about SOS and why I joined is because the extra thing is you're really helping people who need it most. And it's that service aspect that keeps me going every day. I've always enjoyed helping people. I can't remember a time where I didn't.
Yeah.
And just by being able to help people with everything I've learned and done really just keeps me going. And also, I really try to go on distributions whenever I have time to meet the people that finally get the food. Because seeing the people you're cooking for, seeing the people you're helping, really keeps the fire in here going, which keeps the fire there going.
Yeah.
So that's really why.
And I love that the paradox in that is that by helping others, you're feeling good about
of course
yourself. So in it, there's also
there's a slight selfishness to it, I guess, in terms of, but it's not like I'm doing this just to feel good. It feels good, like, it feels good to feel good, and it's nice to help people.
Yeah.
So it's
for sure. So what are some of your, you've been pretty positive so far. So like some of your favorite moments about what you do, but if any, maybe the waking up at 4:30 every morning, least favorite moments about what you do.
I do get tired sometimes. Like the soul is willing, but the body and mind is like, dude, just please slow down. Like you're just a person. Like, okay. But those are, it's not enjoyable, but I wish I could just keep going. I always mention to people, I wish I could clone myself and just have multiple me's just doing stuff. I guess we have difficulties in general. Like logistics is sometimes an issue. Going to the people, communication is always an issue. Like it gets hectic at the office. But those are just normal, general stuff that happens everywhere. The one thing that I don't know. There's nothing really I don't enjoy, but the one thing that really gets me down sometimes is going to an area and distributing and running out of food, and having to tell people no, like we don't have food, like we've run out.
Yeah, I can imagine that's hard.
That's something I try to avoid as much as possible by like cooking more, which is why I want to I've got plans to open up more kitchens so we can directly impact the area, and it's not all reliant from one kitchen. Like we're doing amazing stuff, but there's a limit. There's a limit logistically, there's a limit to capacity-wise, so to avoid that or to bypass that, we need to open more locations.
Do you ever have issues with, how do you maintain that the people who are needing the food are getting the food and not like doubling up on trying to get as much as they can while there is free food?
So that's actually a really good question. I've kind of run a social experiment with this for like the last month. There's been lots of people who message me personally saying like, I really need help. We tend to not want to invite all these people to come to the kitchen because it's overcrowding and kind of defeats the purpose. We deliver to you directly. We have a index that evaluates which people need it the most. We talk with people, community leaders in specific areas to really target and pinpoint the people who really need the help most. And even when you go on distributions, right? Of course, everyone wants food. But when they realize it's free, and if it's an area where it's a strong community, they will tell you, hey, I don't need food that much. Please go to this family first. Please don't go to him, go to her first. They need it more. If you have leftover, then you can come to me.
Yeah.
So we get that reaction a lot, which is incredibly just heartwarming, I guess, because they're all looking after each other. We're all struggling in this moment, right?
Yeah.
And even besides that, another test I did was I do invite about 3 to 5 people to come pick up personally from the kitchen. I ask them how many people there are at home. If they say 5, I offer them 10. So I always offer double. Not a single person in the last month has taken double. They only say like, I will only take what I need, make sure there's left over for other people who want to come.
Wow, that's great. I think that that thing you mentioned about how it's so community-based is also very unique to here, where I've experienced that too in our trips, where they'll point out which people will need it more than themselves, and it's a very...
And despite the fact that they're all struggling, it's like,
exactly.
Please help this person first.
Yeah, so it's always so touching to see and experience that. So while we're talking about what you're doing on a daily basis and what inspires you, do you see yourself doing this permanently?
I mean, I never really know what's going to happen, right?
No one else really does.
It's another one of those hard decisions I've made, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I can see myself continuing in this field or this direction for the entirety of my life, I guess, because it's really the work I enjoy doing. And like I said, it really feels like everything has led up to this moment, and it makes sense. And doors just keep on opening as well. So I can't see myself suddenly going, you know what, I'm going to do something completely different.
So we have seen, and you mentioned as well, since COVID, that there's been a rise of need food-based and everything based. But what do you think will happen when the need declines? Or do you feel like there will always be a need for food and repurposing food waste and all that?
Yeah. I mean, the need for food was always there.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we were operating before COVID as well. It's not like suddenly the pandemic happened and there's suddenly hungry people. There's always been hungry people. After everything gets back to normal, which will also take a long time. It's not like we're just going to open up everything. It's going to be great. People will still be hungry. And even if you just look at Bali, there's going to be lots of hungry people here. But then if you look at Indonesia, there's millions, upon millions of people in poverty who really need help.
Yeah.
Like, I lived in Jakarta, and that's kind of what also really inspired my need to help people. Is like I was seeing poverty next to like extreme wealth, you know, like living side by side, and I never understood that. To this day, I'm always like, why is that happening? So in Indonesia in general, there's so many people who need help, and food is one thing that everyone also desperately needs, and along with all sorts of other things, right? So that need is not going to go away, even if it declines here. I mean, I think there's plans to expand to SOS to other parts of Indonesia.
That was going to be my next question.
Can't really say for sure, right?
Yeah.
But there has been ideas. It's just Corona kind of blocked that. Like, we'll see what happens.
Especially with a country of nearly 270 million people.
And every single city is different, every single place is different. You're dealing with different religions, different backgrounds. I think Bali was a good place to start because it's, again, they have that tourism industry to kind of support them with food, and it's more, I feel like it's a better way it was a good idea to start here and then slowly expand to the other parts.
Plus you have all the facilities available, right?
Yeah,
I always get these questions where people are saying, you know, why not create projects in NTB area where there are larger groups of poor people, but there's not the resources that is necessarily always available to start these kinds of projects.
Like, it will take a lot more
Yeah.
finance, manpower, and energy to do it there.
Yeah.
And that's not saying like it's not going to happen, but you need to start somewhere and create a strong basis and then build up on that basis.
Especially with repurposing food waste, you need a tourism industry to be readily available too. And maintaining that. And also I think like even if the need declines, something that what I love about SOS is that it's repurposing that food waste. Yeah. So it kind of maintains that zero waste system within.
You'd be surprised how much of the air pollution comes from food, from decaying food.
Oh so, yeah, I've heard about that, mixing that with normal trash. Yeah, and it adds to the methane.
We had recently, like a while ago, the trash in the big trash mountain here.
Yeah, in Sunset.
Yeah, so they had a gas problem because it was lots of organic gases were building up inside, and there was a risk of a potential explosion if that was ignited, which is why they churned it now with a bunch of soil.
That's so intense.
But when they were churning that, when they were like releasing that gas, you could smell wafts of gas being blown over to somewhere, and pretty much the whole of somewhere just smelled like trash, right? And this problem is just increasing, and one of the biggest wastes is food, because lots of people throw away food. I think there's also a general kind of people take it for granted quite often. You know, you'll see people order something, eat half, and then it's tossed. You know, like it's
and also like a lack of knowledge, I guess, on the fact that you can't mix organic waste with
that, and also what we deal with a lot is the fear of the expiration date. Is something that's very big. You know, like there's lots of foods that
there's a lot of expired foods in supermarkets.
Yeah, but like expired food is not bad food, right? It depends on which food you're talking about, what kind of food you're talking about, and also the conditions it's been kept, etc., etc., etc. So lots of the product we get is sometimes expired, right? But it's not bad. For example, we had sodas that were expired for a little bit, but soda doesn't go bad. It's like chemicals in a bottle with sugar. It doesn't expire, it goes flat. Like the bubbles go away, that's about it. But it's still safe to drink. I mean, not healthy, but safe. So, and there's these kind of fears and misconceptions about the expiration date that also kind of, contribute to food waste, right? Especially in the Southeast Asian countries, something can be expiring in like 10 minutes, and as soon as it expired, it's like thrown away instead of like, oh, you can still, it's fine. It's like the same as it was like 2 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. The next day will also.
It's not like it suddenly changes within that day.
It's not like one day extra is going to be like, oh no, now it's like the most disgusting, terrible, disease-filled thing in the world. No, it's not. Like there's like flexibility to it.
Yeah.
And that's something that also needs to be taught, of course, slowly, because you can't like just force it on people.
Yeah. Like with anything, really.
Of course.
Going back on your plans and talking about whether this is a permanent thing, and I hate this question too, so maybe we can kind of make it a bit of a shorter time frame, but what are your personal plans for the future, maybe just until the end of the year or within the next year?
Sure.
Because I always hate those like 5-year plan questions.
Yeah, because it's fun to think about, but things always kind of turn out differently.
Yeah.
It's good to have a general feeling of where you want to go, but sometimes things take a right or left turn, and you're like, all right, that's what I'm doing now.
So what's your general feeling?
The general feeling is I want to open up more of these kitchens, so I call them satellite kitchens. So we always have the main kitchen, hopefully for as long as possible. But let's say it closes for some reason, because we are getting it for free from Masanor, and we've been incredibly grateful to them for that. But yeah, as things start to open, they might need the space, we understand it. But what I would like to do is try to set up more kitchens. We've got one in Ubud operating out of a villa that's producing 50 meals a day, and that's being distributed every single day. So if you have like 10, 20 of these smaller kitchens everywhere, right? Then you're still doing a huge amount of food, but it's directly impacting the community where the kitchen's at. So that's something I would like to do. I guess at the end of the year, I would like to have 3 more open. I've got plans of opening one in Jimbaran, one possibly in Grobogan, and then one further north of Ubud. Yeah.
Plus that would take a load off you having to cook it every single day.
We would still be cooking in our kitchen for as long as it's like operational.
But it broadens your reach,
exactly,
right?
It broadens the reach, it increases the amount of people we impact, and decreases logistical costs, right? If I need to deliver food from Sanur all the way to Canggu, that's like 2 hours of going back and forth, right? A total journey. Truck has to go all the way here, because our office is based here, go all the way to Canggu. But if I have a kitchen in Kobokan, for example, then that's a lot closer, you know, and then we can also buy stuff from local markets or local people there. So we're trying to create like closed economies where you're supporting local produce coming into the kitchen. The people who are in the kitchen are also locals from the community that want to give back. And the food goes to the most vulnerable in the community. So it becomes this little closed cycle.
Nice.
And then we can always do other programs, educational programs, teaching people about food safety, about expiration dates through these smaller kitchens, because then it's more accessible instead of having everyone go to our Rumah Sanur location.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's some great like long-term planning, especially knowing like, you know, the food is an immediate relief thing, but you also have some long-term plans.
Well, yeah, it's good to give food now because it's really needed, but we want to reach to a point where it's also sustainable and it's not just, you don't create a dependency, if that makes sense. There's always going to be people who need it, right? And I've got one example I always like sharing. We supported this one little district in Lebanon, and we were giving them for the first 2 months, like every single day or every 2 days, just regularly, to the point where they actually told us, hey, we don't need the support anymore. We've managed to save up with the food that you've been giving us. We've been able to like actually do stuff, and we're getting back on our feet. Please go do the same for other like communities and areas. That's essentially what you'd like to see happen, right? But it also takes initiative from themselves. There's people who will see it as like, oh great, I have food, I can use this money for something else. And there's people who just see it like, yeah, I'll just keep on taking food. So you also have to make sure you don't create that mentality. That's like, no, and then that expectancy, like, oh, okay, I'm getting food this day, but then when it doesn't come, it's like, why am I not getting food? Well, you're supposed to do something with the money you're saving from not having to buy food. Yeah.
It's amazing that you've reached that kind of examples from people that you wanted to have that.
But that's still very like, we still go to lots of areas regularly. but that's something we want to do more. And again, the best way to do it is to be able to educate people, and the easiest way to do that is if you have locations everywhere, because then it's more direct.
But the proof of impact is there. Like
of course.
It shows that what you're doing can have the sustainable long-term effect as well. All right. Well, that's about all the questions that I've had to get to know you a little bit more in SOS. But I always like to close with some positive notes or like pieces of advice. So do you have a philosophy of life or daily motivation or a favorite quote or some sort of advice that you like to live by, or, you know?
I can't recite this by heart, but my favorite poem, and one of the poems that kind of have dictated my life for a long time, is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. So the reason I like that poem is exactly what we've been talking about, right? It's the road less traveled by is the one that doesn't make the most.
Two roads diverged in the wood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So follow that road, follow whatever is in here, even though it doesn't make sense sometimes, even though it's hard, even though you think you're making the wrong decisions and you're going crazy in your room and whatever it may be. Stick to it. Don't lose that faith in that. Don't lose your faith in yourself, because you'll be surprised where you end up after all the difficult, rocky paths that you have to walk to reach this place where everything just kind of goes smoothly. I guess that's the advice that I would give my younger self, and I'm glad that I managed to stick to it as well, and to everyone else.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nick. And also thank you for you listeners for tuning in to this episode of this podcast. If the audience were interested to learn more from you, how would they be able to reach you?
I've got an Instagram or WhatsApp, I guess. You can just message me directly. Very open to chat to anyone. I really reply to everything. So if you ever want to contact me there, that's fine.
Your Instagram handle is?
Nic, N-I-C-K. What is my Instagram? N-I-C-K-K-I-M-V-S. Nic MVS.
Nice.
Yeah.
So people can directly reach out to you.
Yes. Any questions or anything, just feel free.
So there you have it. This has been an enjoyable conversation for me, and I've learned quite a lot. I hope the audience has learned something as well. Let us know what kind of conversations you'd like to listen to on the Seven Stones podcast, and we will see you in our next episode.